Science Day. Scientists study Jane Goodall. This is Jane Goodall. She's a scientist. Let's watch a short video on her life.
Wow, Squeaks, I'm so glad you liked your present. Do you have a name for her yet? Oh, our friend Dino the cuckoo bird sent Squeaks this toy chimpanzee the other day. Chimps are a type of animal called a great ape, and they live in Africa. Dino said this stuffed animal was just so soft and cuddly that it reminded him of Squeaks, and he just had to get it for him. Hey, you know who else had a toy chimpanzee when she was little? A scientist named Jane Goodall. When she was just a baby, Jane's father bought her a toy chimpanzee named Jubilee. It was named after a real chimpanzee that lived in the London Zoo near where Jane lived. Even though some grown-ups worried that Jane would be afraid of the chimp, she loved it. And she loved being around any animal she could find. She dreamed about growing up to live among animals herself and writing books about them. When she was 26, Jane Goodall traveled to Gombe National Park in a part of Africa now called Tanzania to study chimpanzees. For a long time, the chimps ran away from Jane, but she was patient. She tracked the chimps through the forest and got as close as she could to them. She waited for the chimps to get used to her, which took years. But Jane showed up at the same time every day, giving out bananas and just trying to be friendly. Eventually, the chimps at Gombe trusted Jane and let her get close enough to study them. Humans and chimps are actually pretty similar. We're also a part of that group of animals called great apes, along with gorillas, orangutans, and bonobos. So learning about chimpanzees, their habits, how they react to diseases, and their relationships with each other can help us learn more about ourselves, too. Jane Goodall learned about chimps in a way no one ever had before. She approached them with respect and empathy, an understanding of the feelings of others, other humans, and other animals. That's something you're good at too, Squeaks. You're always making sure your friends feel included and have fun when we play. Jane got to know the chimpanzees as individuals with unique personalities. She even gave them names like Frodo, Fifi, Goliath, and David Greybeard. Jane learned that chimps, with their different personalities, are a lot more like humans than we thought. They use lots of different kinds of touch, sounds, and signs to communicate or talk to each other, even if they don't use words like we do. And she discovered that just like humans, chimpanzees can show love for their friends and family, but sometimes get into fights. And they can show feelings too, like being happy or sad. Until Jane Goodall studied chimpanzees, everyone thought chimps were vegetarians, that they didn't eat meat. But as Jane found out, chimps sometimes hunt and eat other animals. So it turns out they're omnivores, meaning they eat plants and meat. But Jane Goodall made an even bigger discovery. She observed David Greybeard and the other chimps making tools. They changed a natural object like a twig to make it fit a purpose. In this case, kind of a combination fishing pole and spoon. They'd strip away the leaves, get the twig ready, stick it inside a termite mound, and pull it out covered with tasty termites. Yum. Well, tasty if you're a chimpanzee. Scientists used to think that humans were the only kind of animal that had ever used tools. Jane's discovery meant that the differences between humans and other animals weren't as clear as we thought. Jane's research was so exciting that soon other scientists were traveling to Gombe to learn her methods. But in the meantime, chimpanzees were becoming endangered. That means that soon there might not be any more of them left. Why not? Well, humans destroying the environment where the chimps live and taking chimps away from their homes are a big part of the reason. When chimpanzees became endangered, Jane Goodall wanted to do everything she could to save them. To do that, she had to leave Gombe, but some other researchers stayed and continued her work, which helped us learn even more about chimpanzees. The study that Jane Goodall started has been going on for 50 years. Meanwhile, Jane traveled the world, explaining to as many people as she could that to save the chimpanzees, we have to save the forest where they live. Jane Goodall's ability to communicate with people and animals by ignoring their differences and treating everyone as equals is one of her greatest talents. It's what makes her such a great spokesperson for endangered species and the environment. And Jane is still traveling and teaching, helping people be kinder to each other, to the environment, and to the animals she loves so much. What's that, Squeaks? You decide on what you want to name your chimp? What'd you pick? Aw, Jane sounds perfect. Good choice, Squeaks. Oh, great idea! Let's call Dino to thank him for the present, and you can tell him all about her name, too. Thanks for joining us! Do you have questions about chimpanzees or other animals or anything at all? Ask a grown-up to help you. Leave a comment down below or send us an email to kids@scishow.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time here at the fort.
So Jane Goodall was an anthropologist. She was born on April 3rd, 1934 in London, England, and best known for studying chimpanzees in the wild. Jane Goodall was born on April 13th, 1934 in London, England. Her father was a businessman and her mother was an author. Growing up, Jane loved animals. She dreamt of someday going to Africa in order to see one of her favorite animals in the wild. She particularly liked chimpanzees. One of her favorite toys as a child was a toy chimpanzee that she loved to play with. Jane spent her late teens and early 20s saving money to go to Africa. She worked various jobs, including as a secretary and a waitress. When she was 23, Jane finally had enough money to visit a friend who lived on a farm in Kenya. Jane fell in love with Africa and decided to stay. She met British anthropologist Louis Leakey, who offered her a job studying chimpanzees. Jane was so excited, she moved to Gombe Stream National Park in Tanzania and began to observe the chimpanzees. When Jane began studying chimpanzees in 1960, she had no formal training or education. This may have actually helped her, as she had her own unique way of observing and recording the chimps' actions and behaviors. Jane spent the next 40 years of her life studying chimpanzees. She discovered many new and interesting things about animals. When Jane Goodall first began studying chimpanzees, she gave each chimp she observed a name. The standard scientific way of studying animals at the time was to assign each animal a number. But Jane was different. She gave the chimps unique names that reflected their appearance or personalities. For example, she named the chimpanzee which first approached her David Graybeard because he had gray on his chin. Other names included Gigi, Mr. McGregor, Goliath, Flo, and Fredo. Jane learned a lot about chimpanzees and made some important discovery. Jane observed a chimp using a piece of grass as a tool. The chimp would put the grass into a termite hole in order to catch termites to eat. She also saw chimps removing leaves from twigs in order to make a tool. This was the first time an animal had been observed using and making tools. Prior to this, it was thought that only humans made tools. Jane also discovered that chimpanzees hunted for meat. They would actually hunt as packs, trap animals, and kill them for their food. Previously, scientists thought that chimps only ate plants. Jane observed many different personalities in the chimpanzee community. Some were kind, quiet, and generous, while others were bullies and aggressive. She saw that the chimps expressed emotions, just like sadness, anger, and joy. Over time, Jane's relationship grew closer and closer to the chimpanzees. For a period of nearly 2 years, she became a member of the chimpanzee troop, living with the chimps as part of their day-to-day lives. She eventually got kicked out when Frodo, a male chimp who didn't like Jane, became the leader of the troop. Jane wrote several articles and books about her experience with chimpanzees, including The Shadow of a Man, The Chimpanzees of Gombe, and 40 Years at Gombe. She spent much of her later years protecting chimpanzees and preserving the habitats of the animals throughout the world. Jane won many awards for her environmental work, including the J. Paul Getty Wildlife Conservation Prize, the Living Legacy Award, Disney's Eco Hero Award, and the Benjamin Franklin Medal of Science. Log on to Epic Books and read your favorite book about Jane Goodall.